I'm Ben Passy. I'm a second year classical archaeology and ancient history student here at Oxford, and sitting alongside me today is Dr. Damian Robinson. He's head of the Oxford Centre for Maritime Archaeology, and he's a lecturer of maritime archaeology here at Oxford. Damian, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and today we're going to be doing a Let's Play for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the boat dynamics, what it's like to control some of the boats, what boats were like in the ancient world, and talk a little bit around the field of maritime archaeology. So this is in the game, Damian, and as you can see, this is the boat now. And what you can do is by holding square, you can actually get the big sails up. So just having some first glimpses at it now, what do you think of the game?
I think it's a really immersive game in which it kind of brings to life sailing in the ancient world, and also things like the harbour that you see around you is really nicely done. It's it's a really good representation of possibly what things would have been like in the ancient world. I mean, the ships themselves are a little different, perhaps, than we might expect, but it's brilliant.
And actually, have we found sort of a pentaconta or a trireme? Do you have any idea which boat this is, and maybe to explain what's the difference between the two? Because those are the two big warships in the ancient world, aren't they?
The pentaconta is a sort of long ship, so it's 50 oared long ship, so you get 25 people on either side, one person to an oar.
Right.
And these were the standard warship in the Homeric period. So Homer's epics about the Trojan Wars, that's all done with pentacontas. The trireme is from classical Athens, so about 500 BC, something like that, and is a three decks of rowers.
Right, okay.
And every single person to an oar, and maybe 250 rowers on the ship. So it is the quintessential battleship of the sort of Athenian world.
Okay. What is maritime archaeology?
What is maritime archaeology? I'm interested in...
And just before you say that, I'm going to dive into the water now. So is this maritime archaeology? Is this maritime
archaeology? It encompasses the excitement and the adventure of what we might like to think we do. But what I'm interested in is people, and people in the way that they lived by the sea, they used the sea, and the types of ships they might, or boats they might have used to sail, to trade, to move across the sea, and also the settlements around them.
Look what I found. So is this what happens? You dive in and then you come out with these statues straight away, or it's a bit? I think we found a new Zeus, the statue of no, it's Poseidon, isn't it?
Poseidon, yes.
But is this a good idea of sort of a classical bronze piece, or do we have this kind of stuff? Do we find this stuff in the water? Have people found this kind of stuff?
Absolutely. There's a very famous shipwreck called the Antikythera ship, which was a vessel that was loaded with classical statuary, coming from the Hellenistic world to the Roman world in the 1st century BC, and it sank off an island in the Aegean, and it was full of this sort of stuff, which is now in the National Museum of Athens. So there's some very, very famous pieces from that particular ship that we study here.
This looks like a little bit like an Artemis and Zeus, don't you think? Like the one in the Ashmolean. There's one actually in the museum here, a copy of this type of statue. So this is definitely where Assassin's Creed has got their inspiration. But it's meant to be a Zeus. Sort of. There's a lot of scholarly debate, which you get quite a lot here. But some people think it's a Zeus, but they've chosen Poseidon. It's all good. We'll forgive them. The controls to you if you're alright with that, and maybe give a go at actually sailing the boat.
Okay.
So this is just controlling going left and right, and if you hold the X now, that will start the rowers. So yeah, you can have a little play there. Maybe not crash into the harbour, but yeah, we're good now.
That's what we do.
If you maybe row past it, yeah. Where is that actually? I think we're in the Gulf of Corinth right now.
Okay.
And is this maybe and there's a whale?
There's a whale, excellent. Well, these things here are the ship sheds. These are the...
Right, so should we go a little bit more to the left?
If I crash into them.
Yeah,
these
park the boat in the ship sheds.
One of the most important thing about your ancient warship is that you keep it dry. And so they're often taken out of water and put into the ship shed so that they're not waterlogged, so they move faster. And the faster your ancient warship goes, the more hitting power, the more killing power it has. So ship sheds are an important part of the kind of the maritime landscape of these places.
I don't know what you think, but I'd like to attack a boat. Oh, there we go. Oh, this is going to be good. Get ready for it. Oh, you've just taken half the health off the boat, by the way. So if you hold L1, which is that one, this is where you brace. So then as the arrows come in, so were there there must have been projectiles between boats, we think, sort of javelins and arrows, but it's very hard to recreate, isn't it?
Maybe we should hide again. The ship itself is designed so that there's a complement of Marines on the decks, and often the ships get bigger so that you can have more Marines on the decks as well. And these are because perhaps unlike this game, the human engine that is rowing these particular ships, they get tired.
Right.
And eventually all the ships sort of stop rowing and all clump together, and this is where the Marines on board come in. So not only are you're able to kind of fight ship to ship like this, but at the end of battles, all the ships kind of clump together, and then your Marines will jump aboard onto
Well, I think we might be doing that now. Being able to jump it, so we can see this boat is quite weak. Brilliant. I think we've got to initiate boarding. I don't know what you think, but so this is maybe something that took place definitely in sort of big sea battles like the Battle of Salamis.
Completely, yes.
Brilliant.
So the ancient sea battles are, especially once you get to this, they're all about speed and agility of the boat, its survivability in battle, and the number of Marines that you can kind of carry on board them as well.
Right. Okay. And so in recent years, there's been quite an amazing discovery in the Black Sea. Could you talk a little bit about that? So some people who might be watching this now I'm dying of health right now. Some people who might be watching may have heard of it, but there's been a big couple of discoveries in the Black Sea. So could you talk a little bit around that, about sort of deep sea archaeology, if that's a term we can use?
Of course, the Black Sea has this amazing cocktail of seawater in it, which preserves wood to an enormous extent.
I've just died. Okay. So they've found two vessels underwater? Or?
No, they found almost a whole fleet of different sorts of vessels of different ages in the Black Sea. So you get amazing preservation of wood because it's very deep as well. It's dark, it's cold, there's not much oxygen around.
And because of that,
because of that, the animals that generally would eat all of the wood on a ship in the elsewhere, they're just not present at the bottom of the Black Sea.
Right, and just talking a little moment about trade, because within maritime archaeology, we're not just studying boats, we are studying the sort of connections between people and places. So we're on the island of Paros now. Could you maybe tell us a little bit of the importance of Paros and why are there all these white blocks everywhere in Paros?
Well, we get Parian marble, and so marble is used throughout the ancient world as sort of decorative veneers on your temple.
Right.
And so it's shiny. It's white. It's shiny. It's a beautiful cut stone to carve. So you can create amazing pieces of art with it as well.
Okay.
But obviously, it all starts with digging it out of a mountainside, and then transporting it around the Mediterranean. And so actually, we get ships that had been transporting blocks of marble that become wrecked, and then they're sort of found by maritime archaeologists.
Right, okay. Just try not to ram into the wall here.
Actually, things that are carrying marble, they're quite easy to find. Simply because...
there's quite a lot of marble that you actually...
Well, also they're big square blocks underwater, and you don't get them naturally. So they're relatively easy to spot.
Right.
Or you have... occasionally you find ships that have been transporting marble columns.
Okay.
And again, you don't necessarily... that's not a feature you get underwater normally.
And could you maybe tell us... So you dive in your profession, so...
I do, yes.
It's maritime archaeology, so it's underwater. So you have obviously an advanced diving qualification as well. Can you maybe tell us something of... Is it treasure hunting? Sort of, have you discovered something exciting? You must have discovered something. Is there something that stands out, perhaps? I've seen a photo of a gold bowl, which I'll add to this video, which is pretty cool.
Have I found anything exciting? The most exciting thing that you find when you're excavating underwater actually comes later. There is the moment of discovery. For me, when I'm digging up an ancient ship, it's a fantastic thing to take part in. But then that kind of ancient ship lives with me when I come back to Oxford and I study more about it and I learn more about it. And then as I write it up and publish it, it becomes much more than just the moment of discovery. Do we find treasure? Well, we find some fantastic things. That's absolutely true. But maritime archaeology and treasure hunting, so finding things and selling them.
That's a big issue in our field, isn't it?
Is a big issue, yes. And isn't necessarily something that we would do as an ethical archaeologist. And so we find things that people would think of as treasure.
Right.
But we don't go hunting for them, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. And when you find remains of a boat underwater, are there sort of bits that sort of stand out? Is it the helm of the boat? Is it the ram at the front? Sort of what aspect sort of really survives that we're able to sort of distinguish it from being not just a pile of woods but actually a boat?
Well, for ancient warships like this, it is the ram. So the bronze cowl that goes over the end of the keel that is generally discovered. Mostly everything else has rotted away. So there's a great maritime battlefield called the Agadi Islands, which are off Sicily, which is where a Roman and a Carthaginian fleet fought during the Punic Wars. And there's a whole set of rams that have been excavated there, discovered there quite recently. And one of my colleagues in the classics faculty, Dr. John Prague, has been studying the inscriptions that are on from these rams. And they tell us, that there are both Carthaginian examples and Roman examples.
Right, okay.
So we find those. But for normal trading ships, what you tend to get are the bottom of the hull, where they've been protected by the cargo from erosion and from decay. And so you get the keel and the planking that goes out around it.
Okay.
So most of the upper superstructure that you see here, we don't really find that so much.
And was there sort of a religious aspect to the boat as well? Because Greece in this period was a very religious society, and I know you have sort of different elements that have been discovered. Like in Italy, there's the anchor of Sostratos, which was sort of an anchor that we think was sort of ritually dedicated in some way. Was there sort of some mythological aspect to the boat, or mythological stories linking to the boat, which added to it, sort of the significance of the front of the boat?
Yeah, boats are always, or boats and ships throughout. Well, even today, we give them names. They seem to have personalities. They move strangely. They make noises. That kind of thing. And so people have always seemed to have thought that they're kind of imbued with something more. So in the Greek world and in other societies as well, they get eyes painted on the front of them to help them, find their way home or guide them through the seas. There's also great. There's a relief plaque that was found in Ostia called the Torlonia relief, and on it there's a depiction of a ship coming into the port of Ostia, and on board it the crew are performing a sacrifice to the gods to say thank you very much for bringing them safely into port. Especially here in Oxford, we're encouraged to use all forms of information about the ancient world and to put them all together. So whether it's literary, textual information, whether it's epigraphic information, whether it's coins and images of ships on coins, whether it's paintings of what warships in the Roman period looked like that we have from places like Pompeii. You can use all of these things to piece together ideas about the maritime world.
And you said that personally you're working on a site in Egypt. Can you talk a little bit more about that? So it's Thonis Heraklion, right? And maybe just tell us a little bit around the sort of what you're doing there, how long you've been working there, what the job entails.
Yes, Thonis Heraklion it's part of a big sunken landscape off the coast of Alexandria. Right. So Alexandria is founded as a city by Alexander the Great, and after he conquers Egypt. And before that, the city of Thonis Heraklion was the major emporium, marketplace for Egypt. And it interacts a lot with the Greek world, so it's on the northwestern side of the Nile Delta. The city itself is destroyed in an earthquake or a tidal wave, something like that, and then it's abandoned and sinks into the sea. And fortunately, we're able to go and excavate it. So I go there every year and join a team of French colleagues from the European Institute of Underwater Archaeology, and we work together in the excavation of this site.
Brilliant. And how long's the site been actually excavated for? Was it quite a long time? Or?
It's been worked on now for about 15, 20 years, something like that. And so we know quite a lot about it, but equally we've only probably excavated something like 1% of the total surface area. So we're really just kind of feeling our way, trying to work out where the major temples were, where the waterways were, where people lived, those sorts of questions at the moment.
And so just looking at, when we think of 5th century Greece, and this is set around 440, so just before the Peloponnesian Wars, we think of the Athenian navy, and they were, without a doubt, the most powerful navy in the sort of the Greek world at that time. And I'm just outside the port of Piraeus, and I was wondering, could you tell me a little bit about what's the significance of why was Athens had such an amazing navy? If you can, I know it's not an easy question, but it's got to have something to do with the geography of where Athens actually is and where Attica is as well.
It's a combination of things. So Athens invests in its navy. It sees the potential of naval power in order to secure trade routes, to create an empire, and to make its port of Piraeus a very a sort of place that all merchants can go to and can find cargoes in. And so, as a result of that, Athens' use of sea power grows. It turns into a naval state.
Did this happen in sort of the 5th century? Is this a bit exaggerated, or were there big battles on the ocean that we sort of?
There were enormous
on the
battles.
Sea, sorry.
So from the Persian Wars, which culminates in the invasion of Greece by Persia, and the Battle of Salamis, which is the kind of the big culmination of that. You have hundreds of ships that are facing off each other in the Salamis Channel of the navies of the allied Greeks under Athens and the Persians. And then later on, there are other big major sea battles where hundreds of ships will fight against each other,
and ships get destroyed like
ships
mine,
get destroyed like yours.
And maybe that's a site that's yet to be discovered in the Aegean. And you touched upon sort of finding bronze objects underwater. There must be some objects that sort of survive better underwater than sort of, for example, I'm guessing wood would rot underwater.
Yeah,
so can you tell us a little bit? So in your field, when you come to a site, what do you find underwater? Is it sort of the remains of little bits of wood, or is there not much wood at all? Or
it depends on the sites that you work on. So in Egypt, we are very, very lucky because of the nature of how the site was abandoned and then how it collapses underwater. And so there we've been able to find the remains of temples and the objects that were in the temples. So one of the great things that the team discovered were 5-metre tall statues of Egyptian pharaohs.
5 metre tall?
They're 5 metre tall, yeah. There's a statue of an Egyptian pharaoh, an Egyptian queen, and the Egyptian god Hapi. Also, we found a sort of 8-metre tall decree with Greek and hieroglyph writing as well that talks about various things in this ancient city. So you can find things like that. These are made out of stone. The great thing about stone is obviously it doesn't rot so much. If its surface has been exposed to the seabed, then it can get rounded off. And so some of the big stela that we have, the Greek has more or less gone simply because it's been eroded by the seawater. But so you get stone objects, but most things made out of wood, they obviously disappear. In Egypt, there was a big tradition of building sort of everyday houses and buildings in mud brick.
Okay.
But obviously mud brick doesn't survive underwater either. So we get lots of pottery, which does survive nicely, metalwork, which survives nicely. Fortunately, where we excavate, the ancient Egyptians put a lot of sacrificial objects into the waterways, and we can excavate the waterways today and find all of these objects that they've put into it as well. So we can get all that sort of stuff.
I didn't know that. And it's probably a little bit of a silly question, but if you look at this crew, for example, there's probably a lot of people to be actually physically rowing the boat. Where do the sailors go to the toilet? Shall I? I know the answer to this question, so I'm going to try and recreate it with.
There's a depiction on a piece of pottery.
Should I turn around now?
Yep.
It was further up, wasn't it? Yeah, there we go.
Of a sailor squatting down on the ram of a ship.
Like that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Cool. It's good to know. These are important facts. This is what we study at university.
Absolutely. And the great issue about warships is how, because they're powered by humans, and humans require all those sorts of things about going to the toilet, being fed, being watered. And if you don't provide these things, then the engine of the ship just doesn't work in any way. So there have been projects where a trireme has been recreated and rowed by Oxford and Cambridge rowers.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. A trireme, so a recreation. Wow.
And then they've worked out that you need about a litre of water if you're rowing hard to consume, yeah, so that your performance isn't impaired.
Yeah.
And as a result of
crazy distances that they're
absolutely. So
competing.
This helps us to think about actually the ancient warship doesn't go on massive journeys. It probably goes on very short hops, and so they might put in at night for more water, more food to cook.
And the Aegean is just perfect for doing that, isn't it? Because you have a cluster of islands quite close to each other.
Yeah.
That you can just stop off at.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And maybe sort of the viewers here that might have sort of an inkling of maybe going into maritime archaeology. I know it's early days, but how does one sort of go about becoming a maritime archaeologist?
Okay, there are lots of different ways. Okay. So for me, it was entirely serendipity.
Okay.
I was.
You weren't from the age of 6. You're like, I will
be
a
diver.
maritime.
No. I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Yeah.
And I was interested in ports and port cities. I came to Oxford.
Yep.
And I met my colleague Frank Goddio, and he invited me to join his project in Egypt.
Brilliant.
I thought that it was fabulous. I learned to dive so that I could.
Great.
Other people come and they learn at university. So we run courses here on maritime archaeology so that we can introduce our students to the maritime world of the Mediterranean and beyond.
Brilliant.
There are master's courses that you can then do if you kind of get the bug and want to do it. And then people do PhDs in maritime archaeology, so I've got students doing that as well.
Assassin's Creed here have taken some liberties with colour, and in the actual, I think it's probably one of the best things about the game is when you look at the sort of the sails of the Athenian ships, they've got sort of a blue background with an owl, and when you're working in your field, they're apart from if it's a metal, the fabric doesn't survive and colour. So how do we sort of recreate this sort of idea? It's just a bit of a interpretation, isn't it?
It is interpretation.
But iconography must have been important. Yeah. Symbols, like we get that from coinage, don't we?
Absolutely. And also some of the rams that we find, they have inscriptions on them, and they have symbols and so forth on them as well. So we know that all of that would have been important. And the ancient world would have been a very polychrome world, so lots of different colours everywhere. And we have to reconstruct that from our wall paintings, from the vase paintings that we have, just to kind of get some idea of this. So, for example, the colours of the ships, you could go to Pompeii in Italy and look at the frescoes, the wall paintings there, which have very colourful vessels on them. So from that we can get an idea that they were kind of brightly painted.
And there are lots of different shaped boats. So right now I've just taken control on a little bit of a smaller one. And these would have had different roles, right? So you wouldn't be able to take this one out right into the middle of the ocean, or it would probably break down.
It's like today. There are different types of boats for different activities, different functions. So in the ancient world, this is exactly what we see. There's a whole kind of spectrum of ships. So the ones that you've been playing with are mainly warships.
Right.
But there are also trading vessels, fishing boats, small little boats that kind of service the harbour. So boats for everything, really.
Okay. I think I'm going to try and break down. So maybe on this note, as I'm sort of heading back into the deep ocean, that we should maybe end the episode. So thank you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, check out our other ones which we're going to release. And if you're interested maybe in the field of maritime archaeology, or more generally speaking, the ancient world, as my boat's crashing now, I will end the episode and dive down underwater. Check out Oxford University Classics Department online, and we've got all our courses there, and you can read a bit around it. Thank you, and see ya.